talk about culture for a bit. Lord Krishna used to have ghee and butter, but he would love animals, and he was amazing. And some people call it mythology. I call it consciousness. But apart from that, we have a lot of symbologies of animals being used but loved at the same time. So culturally, how what was the idea then of including animals in
You see, we are not supposed to emulate the actions of the avatars, the incarnations. That's not how India has been. Because time changes. Everything that is time bound, everything that was present in a particular passage of time is bound to change over the next centuries, millennia, and so on. Now, what is it that you learn from Krishna? The Gita, or the fact that he was consuming milk and butter? Very few people actually read or understand Gita, but we love to use the fable of Sri Krishna to justify dairy consumption. You have to take from the gods that which is timeless, because they come from the timeless dimension. You cannot take from them their dressing sense, their sartorial choices, their language. I mean, if you want to emulate what Sri Krishna used to eat, then you must also emulate the dress he used to wear, the language he used to speak, and all the other things that he did. He is said to have thousands of wives, for example. Would you want to emulate that?
The essence of not very precise, right? When they say Lord Krishna had 1,000 wives, or he had so many cows, etc. I mean, that was also some 4,000 years ago.
That's right, and all of that is very symbolic. All of that is extremely symbolic, and that is meant to teach you something. And the great teachings of Sri Krishna are contained in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. That's what is to be learnt from the great avatar, and that's what is timeless. Everything else is time bound, and what is time bound must be allowed to pass away with time. There is no need to stick to it and keep dragging it and trying to emulate it, and it becomes an anachronism that benefits just nobody.
A lot of people had in those days, they would take care of animals and cows and be with them like family. But none of that happens today. But if somebody would say that we will do that, do you think that gives anybody a green signal? And this is, of course, without any judgment towards somebody.
You see, if someone is so full of love and compassion towards animals, first of all, he will have a spiritual understanding, because love, compassion, and understanding, both realization, these go hand in hand. So this argument that I'm extremely fond of the cow and I'll take care of the cow just as those in the old golden times used to do, and therefore I'll proceed. This argument is both impractical and unrealistic. So I don't think it holds much truth today.
This is a very interesting conversation. I'm trying my best not to dive deep into spiritual questions and stick to the topic
Oh,
where
you will
I would
have to. You will
definitely.
have to. You will have to. You see, anything worthwhile needs to have a deep foundation. You cannot have a high-rise building without a sufficiently deep foundation. So, if you are to bring about such an important change in the way people relate to the animal world, then the thing will have to have a spiritual foundation, otherwise it cannot succeed.
Especially in a country like India, where we are so driven by what our a lot of our religious practices has been, and we sometimes don't understand the science behind them. And a lot of them are actually very relevant also. It's not like they're not, and they're very useful if you understand the science. But some of them are, for example, animal sacrifice. Now that is something which is beyond me. I've never been able to, wrap my head around it. Because on one hand, we think that we need to be compassionate and loving, and even when we are offering something to God, it's not that we're asking something, we're always praying in gratitude. Thank you for giving us this.
Yeah.
And on the second hand, we want to give something to God for like that to a life of another being, which we don't own anyway. What's Can you debunk this? Let's
No,
see.
there is nothing to debunk here, right? Even those who engage in such acts of cruelty know very well that this is all largely bogus. Hmm?
Are you really? Do they? I mean, because I've
Yes.
actually witnessed this in temples. So I went to one temple and I saw blood. I was in a state of shock for a
No,
whole
no,
week.
people know
So
that. People know that. It's just that you see, there is the whole momentum of the past and the unwillingness and the lack of strength and courage to break away from it, right? It's I would have spoken to hundreds and thousands of people, and in private almost everybody admits that they know that this kind of a thing is hollow and inauthentic.
wow.
But then there is this entire momentum of the whole community. Nobody wants to just stick out like a sore thumb. Nobody wants to be the one to call the bluff. So in their private lives, yes, people realize and people also bring about changes, but when it comes to the public domain, there it kind of remains a taboo to openly speak out against such things.
Sure. I mean, you put it so beautifully that it takes courage. So it's interesting to see that even and that's why as well, right? One has to go beyond any labels and just, be in that space. I think, like you said right in the beginning, our conscience is the guiding factor. So when that feels incorrect, that those were the ground rules of
Right, right,
existence on
right,
Bharat anyway.
right, right. And Palak, I'll give you a rule of thumb. A
Mhm.
lot of uh, old religious scriptures, they talk about the animal. The animal. The animal could be talked of as a horse, as a goat, as a lion, as a snake, and the animal is to be defeated, won over, conquered, or sometimes even slaughtered. What is this animal? This you could call it the metaphor of the animal or the archetype of the animal. What is the animal? This animal is not the poor goat walking on the street. We are dealing in symbolism here. This animal is our own physical nature. That is
Ignorance.
ignorance, that which we have inherited from our evolutionary past, that which is a carry forward from the times we spent in the jungle. That is the animal. And that animal we all carry within us. That animal is present in our bodily cells. In every tissue of our body, that animal is present. What is that animal? The animal that is to be slayed or conquered or slaughtered. What is that animal? That animal is the entity that knows no consciousness and is driven purely by biology. What does biology want you to do? Biology wants you to eat, sleep, make merry, procreate, have kids, have territorial occupation, chase one male or one female, and all these things. That's the animal, right? And that's what you find happening all the time in the jungle. And that is what separates man from the jungle. That man's life has a purpose beyond eating, sleeping, and procreating, right? And a man who, when I say man, I mean mankind, man and woman both. Yeah. So, and a man who lives in much the same ways as the creatures of the jungle do, is wasting his life because he has not risen above the jungle. He has not really allowed his consciousness to be elevated. And that's the entire purpose of religion and spirituality, to raise your consciousness to the highest level possible. The animal aspect of you drags your consciousness down to just food and sex. The human aspect or the human responsibility is to lift yourself up and away from the demands, the physical demands of the bodily animal. Therefore, the scriptures take the symbol of the animal and then they say that this animal is to be one. But unfortunately, people in their ignorance think of the animal as the poor goat or the cow or the buffalo or the chicken, and they keep slaughtering the physical animal, which is all so foolish, absolutely absurd. So the symbol,
it's a test,
yeah,
but the irony of it.
Yeah, the symbolism has not been understood, or the symbolism is being exploited to meet animal needs, because you enjoy the taste of the flesh of the animal. So you say, I'm killing the animal because my religion sanctions it. Now the religion is not sanctioning killing of the animal. The religion is saying you conquer your inner animal. Now instead of conquering the inner animal, you are feeding the inner animal the flesh of the outer animal. And by feeding the inner animal the flesh of the outer animal, you are only making the inner animal stronger, and now this inner animal will overpower you. This inner animal will rule over your consciousness. So that's a double whammy.
Very interesting. People might identify with this. There is something called as Shava and there is something called as Shiva. So Shiva is consciousness and Shava is something which is complete ignorance. So when they were referring to conquer the animal, they essentially meant maybe animalistic instincts or being unconscious, not being evolved. I won't use the word evolved, but yeah, aware. Yes.
Yes.
And I mean, the irony of it is amazing because truth is so simple and it's right in front of us, but we make it so complicated.
It's the animal within that dislikes the truth, because you see, the real animal, the ones that are in the jungle, they have nothing to do with the truth. They lead very innocent and simple lives in a way. They have no inner yearning to be liberated, to know, to realize. They don't want to know. They have a set cycle and they live in that particular way. One deer is not very different from another deer. One lion is much the same as another lion. The differences are minimal. But human beings are very different because our primary identity is consciousness. One human being is very different from another human being. because we think, because we have a purpose to life. No animal has a purpose to life. Animals just live. And we could even be envious of them in that sense. They don't really have a responsibility to carry. But we have one enormous responsibility, which is to self-realize, which is to know who we are. And if we don't fulfill that responsibility, you know very well, we remain restless, we don't feel good, and then there is neurosis and a lot of other things, and it's just that one doesn't enjoy life at all if one is not doing what is expected of one as a human being. So yeah.
People at a lot of times people don't even realize that they're supposed to have a higher purpose, or when people find their purpose, sometimes you see them completely changing. And this happens a lot for people who are into animal rights. I wanted to know about your story. When did you make the connection? Because you know how did you turn vegan? I'm very curious to know this.
You see, I was vegetarian since birth. Firstly, I was born in a vegetarian family, and I was into spiritual literature since an early age. And I really do not remember one day or one episode that made me particularly conscious towards animals, but even in my earliest memories, I had this affection towards all living entities. So that was there, but I was not a vegan. When I was in IIT second year or something, there was a Hindi story I read, and it was a good story. It was the autobiography of a calf, and how a cow's calf.
Yeah.
So how it is born and what it has to go through, and how it was denied milk, and then how it was castrated, and then how it was exploited in the fields, and ultimately how it was dispatched to the slaughterhouse. So that made me quit milk at that time. However, the entire full concept of veganism was not known to me at that time. So I left milk, but continued taking milk products for another decade, almost more than a decade, 15 years. Then it was probably waiting to happen that I quit all this altogether. So I had my rabbits, and there was one particular female rabbit, and she had an injury in one leg, and it was incurable. So the doctors had asked me to euthanize it. I had refused. So it required daily care. The dressing had to be changed, the wound had to be cleaned up, and these things. And she could not run, so all the other rabbits would run around and be away and do their stuff, and this one would stay with me all the time. So, and then one day she died, and it was my mistake actually. I did not know much about their anatomy. I probably allowed her to eat some stuff that she shouldn't have taken. So I was in grief, and 2 or 4 days after that, I watched this movie, The Ship of Theseus. And in that, there was this scene in which they were conducting experiments on rabbits. And one of those rabbits looked so much like Nandu, my rabbit. And that was the moment, sitting in the cinema hall there at that time, I decided to just do away with everything that involves anything related to any animal. So, and that was the moment, and after that, it didn't really require any effort. That day and this date has been what, some 7-8 years now. We'll have to look at the release date of that movie. So, yeah, it's been that longer time. So, and it's been quite effortless since then. So once it was left, it was left.
Amazing. So thanks for sharing that touching story with us. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will identify because truly, when you're seeing a chicken or a dog or a rabbit pass a road also and a car is coming in front of them, your mouth doesn't water. We don't feel like, hey, that is a dog now. What am I going to eat it for dinner? This is a baby chicken.
I'll take the liberty of sharing another interesting story in brief, because you just talked of watching a goat or a chicken or something. I was driving down one particular road, and there were these butchers' shops by the side, and it was a bit late in the night, 9 or 10 or something, and one chicken just somehow managed to escape the butcher's knife. It was about to be slaughtered and came running right in front of my car, and I jammed the brakes, and the butcher, of course, came running from the behind and picked the animal up and took it back. And I drove on for around 500 meters, and then I decided that I can't leave the animal like that. So I took a U-turn, came back, and bought the bought the chicken and brought it to my place, and stayed with us for many years, and we have just so many memories and photos and videos and anecdotes with it. So yeah.
That is adorable. Acharya ji, I mean, it's been a true honor to hear about not just your perspective, but also practice in daily life. I think true leaders lead by example, and you're certainly doing that. So this will encourage a lot of people. Thank you so much. And that's all the time which we have. But I'm sure at some time, if you give permission, I would love to speak to you at length about this.
It would be my pleasure. It would be my pleasure, surely, certainly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.